I finally finished Red Rising. Okay, I kind of lied there. I actually finished reading it a little bit ago, but I was working on other videos and haven't had time to talk about it. So just know I've been waiting to make this video. It's crazy. I was looking back at one of my vlogs and I was on Morningstar in August. So just know I've had a lot of time to think about these rankings and they moved around a bit, but I'm pretty happy with what I landed on. I was initially going to make 2 videos, one with my general thoughts and one with my rankings just so I could milk it, but I can't do that. I've literally zero interest in talking spoiler free and I'm not going to make videos just for the sake of making videos. Like I can't do that to y'all. So let me just talk a bit about the series before we get into the rankings, or if you don't care about that, I'll put timestamps so you can skip. Red Rising might be one of the easiest series to read. Like as soon as you read that first line, I would have lived in peace, but my enemies brought me war. Like you're pretty much locked in. Considering it's a futuristic space epic about bioengineered humans in a caste system, it's insane how Pierce Brown made it so easy to digest. I've read some other sci-fi, but a lot of the time the world and the technology makes no sense and it feels like you're reading straight gibberish. Red Rising is not like that at all, and I feel like anybody could get a grasp of the world and how it works. In all honesty, the premise of the books are fairly simple. There's a hierarchy of colors, each with a different role, which has gold at the top and red at the bottom, and a red becomes a goal to topple the society from the inside. But what makes Red Rising so good is each color has their own motivations, and even within colors there are different factions, and it just leads to so much politics. The low colors have to decide between liberation or vengeance. The Obsidians want independence from the rest of the Republic. There's such a big difference between core golds and rim golds, and Darrow has to navigate through all of this. That's why watching Darrow go from a low red all the way to becoming the peak of humanity, a peerless Scar, the Reaper of Mars, is so satisfying. What makes Darrow so much better than a lot of other main characters is that he didn't even want to do this. It was Io who forced him into this life, and he has to grow into the role of a leader. I know the trope is overused so much, but it hits every time watching someone climb to the top. And unlike other stories, Darrow's not invincible. I mean, he's pretty OP, but like it makes sense in the context of the story. Obviously, the entire saga is about Darrow, but Pierce Brown expanded the story and has so many great characters. I was nervous when I found out that after the original trilogy, the books were gonna have multiple POVs, but I could confidently say that they are just as good. Red Rising is filled with great plot twists, sick fights, epic speeches, and I wish I could erase my memory and reread it for the first time, but I can't. So I gotta do the next best thing and just talk about them. As you can tell by the title of this video, I'm gonna be giving you my rankings for the 6 Red Rising books that are currently out. This was incredibly difficult. I changed the order so many different times, and for a lot of them, it could really go either way, but as of right now, this is my official ranking. I've looked at a bunch of other people's lists to kind of get like a temperature check, and from what I've seen, I am definitely in the minority with this ranking. At number 6, I have Dark Age. I know, putting what most people would have as one of the best books dead last is kind of crazy, and it might seem like rage bait, but let me explain. If I was to just make a list of all of the insane things that happen in Dark Age, yeah, like it would probably be number 1. Like it has the Iron Rain on Mercury, Severo and Victor's baby is killed, we find out Volga is Ragnar's daughter, Volsung Fa kills Sephi in a duel, Lysander kills Alexander, we find out Cassie is still alive, Lyria infiltrates the Red Hand and saves the girls, Pax and Ephraim get close, Mustang and Severo extract the information from the Duke of Hands, and Darrow and Lysander clash. But if I'm being completely honest about the entire experience of the book and how I felt while I was reading it, it was the worst. The main reason why is because the pacing of this book is so bad. You'll be reading one character's POV for a while and get completely hooked into what they're doing, and then it just switches out of nowhere. And then even though you didn't want it to switch, you start getting interested in the new character's POV, but guess what? It just switches again. And it's not like you're gonna get back to that character anytime soon. There were stretches where you had to wait like 100 to 200 pages to find out what happened. I swear, I don't think I ever reached flow state while I was reading Dark Age. The other thing about Dark Age is it's definitely the most out there out of all of the Red Rising books. For some people that might work, but for me there was a couple of times where it lost me a bit, and there was one big thing that happened where maybe just put down the book and go, what? I'm of course talking about the reveal of the Abomination. When Adrius died at the end of Morningstar, I was really pleasantly surprised because I thought for sure he was going to escape somehow and be a villain in the second series, and I didn't want that. I thought it was a good ending with Virginia pulling his feet, and I was happy that Pierce Brown closed that chapter of the story. But having him return as the Abomination kind of ruined that for me. I understand the argument that it's technically a different person, and it's clear that Pierce Brown is heavily inspired by Dune, but I don't know, it still felt cheap to me. It also destroyed my interest in the Syndicate. A large chunk of Iron Gold was about the mystery of the Syndicate and the Queen, and for it to just be Lilith of all people is so whack. It was also just unnecessarily gross. Like, what do you mean Lilith gave birth to him, is raising him, but is still in love with him? Like, what? I don't know, maybe it's just me, but Lilith's motivations make absolutely no sense at all. Like, what happened in the Institute that makes you do all this stuff? This was my biggest problem with Dark Age, but there were still some other things that didn't make sense. Like, after finishing Lightbringer, I don't know why Pierce Brown had Lyria get the parasite in the first place if he was just gonna get rid of it. It seemed cool at first as a way of giving Lyria powers, but now that it's gone, its inclusion in Dark Age did not age well. I know it seems like I'm just hating on Dark Age, but you gotta trust me, I did enjoy it, and the highs in this book are some of the highest in the entire series. My personal favorite moment moment is when Lysander comes across the Howlers, and we get to see just how scary Darrow is from someone else's perspective. Oh my god, that chapter is so good, and that's definitely in my top 5 moments in the entire series. But as a whole, this book was all over the place, and I feel like a lot of things were done just for shock value. I thought about it for a while, and if I was going to reread any of the books, Dark Age is the one I'd want to the least, and that's why it's in the number 6 spot. This feels really low for this book, and it pains me to have to put it here, but at number 5, I have Morningstar. As I was preparing for this video, I was reading summaries to remember what happened, and I forgot how awesome this book is. Even though it's at number 5, just know it's a significant jump up from Dark Age, and from here on, all of my choices are super close to one another. Coming off of Golden Sun, Darrow is at his lowest point of the entire series so far, and is being tortured by the Jackal for months. I'm not too hot on the beginning of the book, you know, it feels slow, but it really picks up pace after him and Victra are rescued. They go to Phobos and kidnap Quicksilver. They find out that he's actually a leader of the Sons of Ares, and Darrow gives his epic speech to all the low colors. As awesome as this moment was, I kind of wanted something different. I guess this is more of an issue with the ending of Golden Sun, but I really wanted a scene where Darrow tells all of the golds that he's actually a red. I wanted him to be like, "You think you're better than me because you're a gold? Well, I'm a red and I became the best of you." Since the very beginning of the series, I was waiting for that to happen. Like, that's my favorite type of moment, but of course they found out off screen and we never got it. His speech on Phobos is the closest we get to it, and even though it's not exactly what I would have liked, it's still probably his best speech in the entire series. After finishing all the books, I gotta say what makes Morningstar stick out the most is just how impactful its events are for the rest of the series. There are 3 big moments that come to mind that literally shape what the future is gonna be. The 3 are Ragnar's death, the destruction of the Ganymean dockyards, and letting Lysander live. Ragnar's death was something that I was not expecting, and because of that, it sucked. He was off-rip one of my favorite characters when he was introduced in Golden Sun, so seeing him get freedom and make a life for himself outside of war, just to have him die where he started, was not very fun. Some of his last words were spent telling Darrow that he was gonna see him again in the Vale. Dude, I hate Aja so much. Besides being really sad though, his death leads to Sephi becoming queen, which has a crazy ripple effect on the rest of the series. If she just stayed with the Republic, things could have been so different. For me, the craziest moment in this book, and honestly one of the crazier moments in the series, is when Darrow decides to betray Romulus and destroy the dockyards. It showed that Darrow is not entirely honorable or even just a good person. He went back on his word and he abandoned all of the low colors in the Rim. This is a decision that looms over Darrow for years, and it's what brings the Rim into the war a decade later. But I think by far the most pivotal moment in the entire series is Darrow choosing not to kill Lysander. When it happened, I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal because Lysander was going with Cassius, but boy was I wrong. They should have taken him out when they had the chance. I honestly don't have that much negative to say about Morningstar, and I didn't even get to like the space battle between Darrow and Roke, or the whole plotline about the Obsidian Queen knowing the truth. But the reason why it's so low is because it almost moves too fast. There are things that happen so quickly where you just go, what? The most egregious of them all is Severo and Victra getting married. Honestly, this is not just an issue with Morningstar. I think that all of the romantic relationships outside of Darrow and Mustang are pretty weak. They're all tell no show. A lot of the time it just reads as they're in love because they're in love. But it's the worst with Severo and Victra. Victra clearly had a thing for Darrow, but since he was gonna end up with Mustang, Pierce Pounder was like, alright, you're paired up with Severo, boom, done. I swear, I barely remember the two of them even talking before they got married. This other thing's not that big of a deal since I love the twist of making Cassius a good guy, but the ending did feel a bit rushed considering that they were overthrowing the entire society. Overall, Morningstar is an amazing book, but I like the rest of them just a bit more. In number 4, I got the book that is the most slept on, and that is Iron Gold. When I was looking at other people's lists, Iron Gold was consistently found at the bottom, and I just don't understand it. I mean, it's a bit weird going from only Darrow's point of view to multiple characters' POV, but once you get used to it, the book slaps. My favorite part of this book is just how much mystery there is. Between the Ash Lord, the Syndicate, Ephraim's relationship to Lyria, what the Rim's planning on doing, there's always something that you want to learn more about, and it keeps you hooked the entire way. I will say though, the outcomes aren't always the best, especially when you start getting into Dark Age. For example, I really wanted to see more of Seraphina and Lysander, but she gets blown to bits and dies for no reason. And like I said before, I really wanted the Syndicate to be this cool new faction, but instead it ended up just being the Abomination. Even though Dark Age retroactively makes some things worse for me, if I'm going on just how I was feeling while I read it, Iron Gold is elite. The main reason why is because there's not a single POV character that I'm not interested in. In both Dark Age and even Lightbringer, there's at least one character who has a plot line where when their name shows up on a chapter, you just want to get through it as fast as possible. Iron Gold was the most consistent for me, and that rarely happened. My favorite addition by far was Lyria. What a great idea to have a Red from the Mind show us how the Republic is failing the very people it was supposed to protect. Pretty much the entire first trilogy takes place with the most powerful people in the solar system with the highest stakes, but with Lyria we get to see what life is like on the ground. Even though we know Darrow's trying to do the right thing, we see that the lives of low color colors really hasn't improved, especially after Lyria's family is killed by the Red Hand. I think it's so much fun watching a character who, relative to everyone else, is pretty much just an ant get swept up into this crazy journey. Then there's Ephraim, who gives us another perspective. Even though there's so many different colors in Red Rising, we really only get to see the red and the gold's point of view. I like how we get to see what life is like for someone else for a change, and unlike Lyria, he's not new to this life, so we can just jump right in. Also, he's good at what he does, but he's not strong like the golds, and instead has to rely on being crafty. Ephraim's not the best person. He's mean to Volga, he manipulates Lyria, and he literally kidnaps children, but whenever he pops up, it is interesting. Both him and Lyria get better in the later books, but it's Iron Gold that sets the foundation for each of them. You know who doesn't get better as the books go on? Lysander. I hate that dude so much, but his chapters in Iron Gold are really good. I feel like everyone knew that the Rim finding out what Darrow did was inevitable, but it was still really fun while they had to hide it. We got to learn a lot more about the Rim's politics, and we met the GOAT Diomedes. You can't tell me it wasn't hype when he started fighting and Lysander and Cassius realized that he's a better fighter than Cassius. This entire section of the book was great, and when people hate on Iron Gold, I feel like they forget that one of the best moments in the series happens in it. I am Cassius Bellona, and my honor remains. Obviously, he didn't die there, but if he did, it would still be a good ending. Even Romulus went out good. I actually don't know why I said even. I like Romulus, but yeah, his death scene was really great. I just wish he made it all the way. When I was reading Iron Gold, I was still really excited to read his chapters, but I feel like Darrow takes a much smaller role in this book than all the others. I wasn't the biggest fan of the prison break stuff, but I like the conflict between him and the Republic. They're trying to make democracy, but Darrow just ignores them every time and just like, all right, guys,
drop the Iron Rain.
It's unfortunate because the one time they really need to listen to him, they don't and force him to go rogue. I won't lie and say Iron Gold's the most action-packed, but I like the change of pace, and that's why it made it to number 4. In the number 3 spot, I got the original. Red Rising. Just like Iron Gold, Red Rising is often found at the bottom of people's lists, and I don't get that at all. Out of the 6 books, Red Rising is easily the most gripping. I barely put it down, and I finished it in a couple of sittings. If I had to assume why people rate it so much lower, it's because the scale of it is just so much smaller. The other books are these huge epic stories with politics and massive battles, and this book pretty much takes place in one location. But for me, that doesn't affect it at all. If I was trying to describe this book, I would say it's like if you took the Hunger Games and combined it with Catching Fire. It's really that good. The other reason why I don't get the low placement is because it literally is the foundation of so many ideas throughout the series. From the jump, we get to understand the Red's place in the hierarchy, how the society operates, and when she's killed, the burden of Eo's dream is passed on to Darrow. What she does in the first, 50 pages is the most important thing in the entire series and is still being referenced. Also, Red Rising is where the majority of Darrow's relationships are made. I know that everybody loves Darrow and Cassius' friendship, but when you think about it, besides for Lightbringer, they don't spend that much time together, and if they do, they're trying to kill each other. Even when they make up in Morningstar, they're just reminiscing about their days in the Institute. It's kind of the same thing with Darrow and Mustang. In the second trilogy of books, they're pretty much separated for the entire time. We only know or even care about their relationship because of what happens in the first book. I'd have to think about it some more, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any better moments between them than when they nurse each other back to health in the cave. I don't think it's to the same extent with Severo, but again, this is where the Howlers are formed. What type of sickos are jumping out of horses? The biggest difference between this book and the rest of the series, and why I enjoy it so much, is because it's short and to the point. Compared to Dark Age, which is really bloated, this book has no filler and is able to jam in so much good stuff into it. It also has a clear villain with the Jackal, or Adrius, or whatever you want to call him. Especially in the later books, there's so many different factions and alliances, and it's unclear until the end of Lightbringer who the true villain really is. But in Red Rising, it's pretty simple. All Darrow has to focus on is beating the Jackal and winning the Institute. And the Jackal is insane. He's cutting off his own hand, he's eating people, he's like the perfect villain. Red Rising also has the best pacing out of all of the books. As soon as Darrow learns the truth about the world, the book picks up and it really never slows down. It felt like every single chapter ended on a crazy note and you had no choice but to keep on reading. At the end of the book, Pierce Brown actually reached flow state. Every chapter, it was back to back. Like, what do you mean Mustang's the Jackal's sister? I was like, this guy's the GOAT. It's crazy because I don't even think that's the best twist in the book. When Darrow finds out that Titus is also a Red, I was not expecting that at all, and it really caught me by surprise. Red Rising also has a built-in tension that none of the other books have because he's hiding his identity from everyone. And if that wasn't enough, he also can't tell anyone that he killed Julian. I love you, King Julian! Even though Red Rising is the shortest book, it is by far the hardest hitting pound for pound, and it is the perfect introduction to the series. In the number 2 spot, just barely beating out Red Rising, I got Golden Sun. Just like Red Rising, the pace of this book is absolutely insane. But unlike the first book, which I think kind of has a slow start, we don't need any time to have the world explained to us, and we jump straight into it. Darrow's at the Academy, which is basically just the Institute for Space Battles, and it's shown that he's still the GOAT. He was about to win if he didn't get cheated, but even after that, he was about to launch himself at the other ship before before the proctors stopped him. If I was to say my one nitpick with Golden Sun is that it almost immediately takes away all the clout that Darrow gained in Red Rising. It doesn't even make that much sense. Like, he gets jumped by a bunch of people outside of combat and suddenly he's worthless. Like, how does that work? It doesn't affect my enjoyment of the book at all though, because it goes on to have the coolest moments in the entire series. I think the one that everyone unanimously agrees on is the gala scene. It's so good. At this point, Darrow's at his lowest. He's about to get dropped by Nero, and then Cassius walks in with Mustang and he's like, all right, I can't let that slide. The entire sequence is so perfect. He jumps on the table, calls out the entire Bologna family, and then challenges Cassius to a duel. I don't know why, but it also gets me hype how he convinces Nero to let him fight. He tells him that he's doing it for him, and then they do that thing where they cut under their eyes, and it's straight manipulation on Darrow's part. Then we get to the duel, and we don't know how it's gonna go since Cassius pieced up Darrow in the Institute. But Darrow has them all right where he wants them. Bro, he says, "You think you're entitled to my life? While you've been doing whatever you've been doing, I've been training night and day with Lorne." The fact that just his name puts fear into people's hearts shows how insane he must have been. Darrow goes on to straight up embarrass Cassius, and he takes his sword arm off. And the best part about it is that it wasn't just for personal beef. He forces the Sovereign to pick a side, and with this one move, he starts a civil war between the Golds. It really is one of the best moments in the entire series, if not the best. But that's not all Golden Sun has to offer. This book is filled with amazing moments. It's in this book that we get introduced to Ragnar, and I love every scene that he's in. One of my favorite moments in the series is when Darrow trusts Ragnar and tells him the truth about himself. Then there's the other scene in the Iron Rain when Darrow gives Ragnar a razor. Like, how does anybody not like this series? Darrow gives Ragnar the choice to do whatever he wants, and he still chooses to be the biggest ride or die of all time. Like when Darrow tells Mustang the truth and she points a gun at him, the first thing she hears from the shadows is,
You pull that trigger, you're dead.
oh my God. There's so many great reveals in Golden Sun too. You got Fitchner revealing that he's Ares, Darrow telling Severo that he's a Red, and I think the one that got everyone is that Io was pregnant when she was killed. That might as well be the definition of a bombshell. I was looking online and apparently people hate Io because they think that she was selfish, but I don't agree with that at all. While I love this book and think it has great emotional moments, I will say that not every single one landed completely. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I did not care at all when Quinn died. I get that it was supposed to be a big moment and it's supposed to be important to Roke, but just like, I could not care less. The other one was Tactus. Like, you snake Darrow and threaten Lorne's family. I don't like you. Again, these are more nitpicks than anything, and it's still one of my favorite books, but what's stopping it from being in the #1 spot is the ending. It's by zero stretch of the imagination a bad ending, and it's yet another great plot twist with Darrow's friends being slaughtered on the day that's supposed to be his triumph. But I gotta be honest, I just can't put the book that ends with Darrow taking the fattest L possible as the #1. I just can't. Now, there should be no surprise since there's only one book left, but at #1, I have Lightbringer. This is the book that found the perfect balance between the multi-POVs in the second trilogy and the magic and excitement of the first trilogy. The reason why it was so successful for me is because the story is so much more centered. Unlike Dark Age, which was all over the place, Lightbringer reeled it back in to just focus on what was important. And even though there were 4 different POV characters, they were pretty much always related to another. Like, I didn't mind when it was switching between Lysander and Mustang because it was covering the same conflict. We weren't jumping all over the solar system between chapters. But what I think makes this book so good is that it goes back to focusing on Darrow. I wouldn't say that he took a back seat in the 2 books before this, but Lightbringer is really his book, and it shows him trying to find himself again. At this point in the story, we don't need a million fights and constant action. Like, we've done that already. I'm not saying this book's boring, and we'll get to the most awesome moments in it, but I really love the slower pace and giving time for Darrow to rebuild. He's been at war for years, and he's lost sight of himself, and throughout this book, he's just finding his way back. The greatest example of this is him coming face to face with the daughters of Athena, who have all suffered because he abandoned them. But I think the best part of this book is the relationships that are either forged or reforged. The one that is easily the most satisfying is Darrow and Cassius. They've had a long history with each other with a lot of ups and downs, but in Lightbringer, they get closer than ever before, and they become brothers again. Darrow also begins fixing his relationship with Severo, which is cool, I guess. I hate to admit it, but Severo has sucked so far in the second trilogy. He comes across as whiny. I don't know why he's mad at Darrow, and his characterization is so weird. Maybe it doesn't bother you guys, but I hate how he's literally dirty and unsanitary, and everything that he says is vulgar. I get it in the first trilogy, but at this point, he's in his 30s bragging about not bathing. Like, it just doesn't work for me at all. At least in Lightbringer, though, he's getting back to the Severo that I liked in the first trilogy. I also love the new group that's formed on the Archimedes. Darrow, Severo, Cassius, Lyria, and Diomedes is surprisingly a good team. I haven't gotten to talk about him as much as I'd like to in this video, but Diomedes is one of my favorite characters. I absolutely love super honorable characters, and I don't think there's anyone more honorable in this universe than Diomedes. I was also pleasantly surprised with Cassius and Lyria's friendship. pretty wholesome stuff. But what really sells the book for me is what happens towards the end. I don't know if it's better than his duel with Cassius, but Darrow's fight with Volsung Fa is so peak. Fa has been the boogeyman for the entire second trilogy, and to watch Darrow walk him down and fraud check him like that was so satisfying. I think with that, Darrow reclaimed his spot as the strongest in the verse. I eventually had to get to this, but let's talk about Lysander. I hate this dude so much, but all that means is that Pierce Brown did a great job of making him the villain. The reveal that Atlas has been orchestrating everything was really well done, but I just knew that the final big bad had to be Lysander. And he really took up that role when he killed Cassius. I was genuinely mad when I read that. Like, he had just become brothers with Darrow again. Lysander is so evil. Like, that man practically raised you and you're just gonna murder him? He then puts the cherry on top by betraying my goat Diomedes and attacking the Rim. Because of Cassius's death, I wouldn't say that Lightbringer ends on a happy note, but it got me so hyped for Red God, and I can't wait for Darrow to kill Lysander. That's it for my ranking of the Red Rising series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If not, let me know what your rankings are in the comments. It was really hard to make this ranking because all of them are so good. Dark Age in last and Lightbringer at first were pretty much locks, but I was super close to switching up Morningstar and Iron Gold and Red Rising and Golden Sun. Like, those really could have gone either way. This series is so goated, and there's so much that I didn't even get to, but I'm glad I got to talk about it at all. Anyways, my good men, peace out.